England, 1847. A heavy morning fog covered the countryside. As Elena Collins sat quietly in a carriage, watching the green hills of Hampshire pass by. At 26, she never expected that less. Then a year after losing her first husband, she would be traveling to meet another, especially a powerful duke she had never met. Her late husband's solicitor, Mr. Blackwood, reminded her they would reach Ravenshollow Manor within the hour. When she nervously asked if there was truly no other option, he gently confirmed that because of her husband's debts and her family's limited means, this marriage was her only protection from poverty. Determined to hide her fear, Elena straightened her posture. She had chosen her best dark green traveling dress and carefully arranged her chestnut hair under her bonnet so she would appear calm and dignified when meeting the man who would soon become her husband. As the carriage rolled through tall iron gates, the grand and gloomy Ravenshollow Manor came into view. The old stone building looked powerful and intimidating, its tall windows seeming to watch her arrival. Waiting outside with the servants stood the Duke of Ravenshollow himself, Edmund Whittaker. He was 35, dressed entirely in black, with silver already showing in his dark hair and a face marked by grief. His expression showed no warmth as he helped her from the carriage and welcomed her in a cold, formal tone. He quickly made it clear that their marriage was not a romantic matter but a practical agreement. After introducing her briefly, he instructed the butler, Hawkins, to escort her to her rooms before dinner and then walked away, leaving her standing among the servants. Hawkins guided Elena through the large entrance hall, where serious portraits of the Duke's ancestors lined the walls and polished marble floors reflected the dim light. The place felt grand but strangely cold. Curious about the children she was expected to care for, she asked about them during the walk. Hawkins explained that the Duke's son, William, was 7 years old, and his daughter, Charlotte, had just turned 5. They usually ate in the nursery and followed a strict daily schedule. Elena felt a deep sympathy for them, knowing they had lost their mother at such young ages. When she reached her spacious but rather plain bedroom, Hawkins informed her that a maid named Martha would assist her, and that dinner would be served exactly at 7, as the Duke disliked any lateness. Once alone, Elena finally allowed herself to breathe. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she wondered what kind of life she had just stepped into. She had agreed to marry a man who clearly had no interest in her beyond convenience. Looking out the window, she saw the large gardens stretching across the estate. In the distance, 2 small children walked with their governess, likely William and Charlotte. They were the reason she had accepted this strange arrangement. If she could offer them kindness and stability, perhaps she could find meaning in this cold house. Quietly encouraging herself, she promised she would endure whatever came next. Dinner that evening felt awkward and distant. The long dining table kept them far apart, with the Duke at one end and Elena at the other. After the first course was served, he asked politely if her rooms were acceptable. He then explained that the estate had been in his family for 10 generations and that he expected her to carry out the duties of a duchess with dignity. When she asked about his children, his expression tightened slightly. He said they already had a governess and nanny and that her role would simply be to provide a suitable motherly presence. Then he spoke very directly. He was marrying again only because his children needed a mother figure, and he required an heir. His heart, he said plainly, remained with his late wife. Although his words hurt, Elena stayed, composed, and admitted that she also understood the practical nature of their union. The Duke seemed satisfied with her calm response and raised his glass to what he called a mutually beneficial arrangement. They agreed the wedding would take place in 2 weeks with only a small private ceremony. The rest of the meal passed in near silence until he excused himself for business matters. When she finally returned to her room, she reflected on the future awaiting her. The next day she would meet the children, and she hoped that caring for them might bring some warmth into the quiet halls of Ravenshollow. The following morning arrived bright and clear after the night's rain. Wanting to make a good first impression, Elena chose a soft blue dress and asked Martha to style her hair more gently than usual. Martha quietly informed her that the children were having breakfast in the small parlor and that the Duke had decided it would be the right moment for introductions. She also shared that the children had struggled since their mother's death. Charlotte barely remembered her, but William had grown quiet and protective of his sister. Hearing this made Elena even more determined to approach them with patience and kindness. When Elena entered the sunny parlor, she saw the two children sitting neatly at a round table with their governess, Miss Peaton. William looked serious and cautious, much like his father, while Charlotte watched her with open curiosity. After the introductions, William immediately asked if she was going to be their new mother. The question surprised her, but she answered gently that no one could replace their mother, though she hoped she could care for them and perhaps become their friend. Charlotte explained proudly that their mother was in heaven, and that their father told them never to forget her. Elena agreed wholeheartedly, promising that their mother would always remain important in their lives. Elena asked if she could sit with them during breakfast, and the conversation slowly became easier. She asked about their lessons, listened to Charlotte talk about learning her letters, and chatted with William about geography. When Charlotte asked whether she had ever seen mermaids by the sea, Miss Peaton quickly dismissed the idea, but Elena kindly described dolphins and whales she had seen near the coast instead. The children listened with growing interest. By the end of the meal, Charlotte was smiling brightly, and even William had begun asking thoughtful questions. The Duke suddenly appeared in the doorway and quietly observed the scene. After sending the children to their lessons, he spoke privately with Elena. She complimented the children, mentioning how bright Charlotte was and how thoughtful William seemed. When she gently mentioned that they still missed their mother, the Duke immediately shut down the subject, insisting their emotions were not her concern. Elena respectfully disagreed, saying that if she was to become their stepmother, their feelings must matter to her. Surprised by her courage, the Duke paused before finally allowing her limited time with the children outside their lessons. Later in the library, they reviewed the marriage contract. The terms were exactly as she expected. She would gain security and status, while the Duke would gain a proper lady of the house and the chance for an heir. The ceremony would be private in the estate chapel. After signing the documents, the Duke announced he would travel to London for several days and that they would marry when he returned. With that, he left the estate again, leaving Elena to adjust to her new surroundings largely on her own. During the following days, a routine developed. Each morning, she shared breakfast with William and Charlotte, and afterward, she learned about the household from the capable housekeeper, Mrs. Winters. In the afternoon, she spent time in the nursery, slowly gaining Charlotte's affection and gently earning William's trust. One evening, she brought a large atlas from the library and showed William the paths whales travel across the oceans. He was fascinated and admitted his father had never shown him such things. Charlotte happily listened as Elena told stories about fishermen and the sea. As the days passed, the children became more comfortable around her. Charlotte began bringing her drawings and small secrets, while William watched her with thoughtful curiosity rather than suspicion. One afternoon in the garden, she found him trying to build a small boat from sticks and leaves. Kneeling beside him despite muddy grass, she suggested using bark to help it float, explaining that her own father had once taught her the same game. Their conversation soon turned more serious. When William admitted he could no longer clearly remember his mother's face, the confession brought tears to his eyes. To comfort him, Elena showed him a small locket she carried with a portrait of her late husband. She suggested that perhaps he might also keep a picture of his mother close to remember her. William explained that his father had packed away all of her belongings because speaking about her was too painful. Hearing this, Elena promised she would ask the Duke if William could have a small portrait. That evening, she wrote to the Duke in London describing the children's progress and gently requesting permission for William to have a miniature portrait of his mother. A few days later, a package arrived containing exactly that, a small painting of a beautiful woman who clearly resembled both children. There was no letter attached, but the gift spoke for itself. When William received it, his face filled with both happiness and sadness as he thanked Elena quietly. That night, the children allowed her to tuck them into bed for the first time. Charlotte asked for a story, and Elena told them about Brave Lighthouse, keepers guiding ships safely. through storms. As Charlotte drifted to sleep and William listened quietly, the nursery finally felt peaceful. Before she left, William thanked her again for the portrait and asked if she would continue visiting them after the wedding. She promised she would always come whenever they wished. Over the next week, Elena realized how deeply she had begun to care for the children. Soon she would marry their father, a man who openly admitted he expected nothing more than duty from her. Still, she quietly hoped that with time he might see her as more than a practical solution. As she fell asleep that night, the children's trusting faces remained in her mind. The wedding day arrived cold and bright, with frost covering the windows of Raven's Hollow. In her room, Martha helped her into a simple ivory silk gown, decorated with delicate lace and a small cluster of white roses in her hair. Though she looked calm, her hands trembled slightly. The housekeeper soon arrived to announce that the Duke had returned and that the ceremony would begin soon. Standing by the window, Elena wondered if she was making a terrible mistake. But she reminded herself that she had chosen this path for the sake of the children. The ceremony took place in the small stone chapel on the estate grounds. Only a few people attended: the Duke, his solicitor, the vicar, and a few trusted servants. The vows were spoken quickly, with little emotion. When Edmund Whitaker placed a simple gold ring on her finger, the gesture felt more like completing a formal agreement than beginning a marriage. After signing the registry, Elena officially became the Duchess of Raven's Hollow. Outside the chapel, Charlotte ran forward with a small bouquet of flowers she and William had picked for the bride. Touched by the gesture, Elena knelt to thank them warmly. William then asked carefully if they should call her mother now. Seeing the Duke's tense reaction, she gently told them they could call her whatever felt comfortable. She then suggested that the children join them for lunch, and after a moment of hesitation, the Duke agreed. Lunch was somewhat uncomfortable, though Charlotte's cheerful chatter eased the tension slightly. When she innocently asked whether there would be cake because her mother used to say weddings should always have cake, the room suddenly fell silent. Trying to help, Elena suggested they might ask the cook for a special dessert, but the Duke quickly dismissed the children and then turned to her with a cold expression. He warned her not to make promises to his children without consulting him first. When she calmly replied that it was only a suggestion, he explained that small kindnesses might lead the children to expect affection. He believed he could no longer give. The Duke's eyes burned with anger as he spoke about false hope. He insisted the children had already lost one mother, and he would not let them grow up believing in fairy tale ideas about perfect families. Elena quietly set her napkin on the table and reminded him that they were still young and deserved happiness. The Duke argued that what children truly needed was order and stability, not too much emotion. She calmly asked why love and security could not exist together. Frustrated, he stood up and declared that love often brought pain, and he would not gamble his children's future on something so uncertain. Without another word, he left the room, leaving Elena alone at the long dining table on the very day of their wedding. In the weeks that followed, their unusual marriage slowly settled into a pattern. Elena began managing the household, and quickly showed how capable and organized she was. The Duke spent most of his days locked away in his study and appeared mainly at dinner, where their conversations stayed polite but distant. At night, they slept in separate rooms. He had explained clearly that although he expected an heir someday, he was not ready for that responsibility yet. Instead, Elena focused on the children. Charlotte grew happier under her gentle care, while William remained quiet but slowly started enjoying her company, especially when they spent time in the library reading about maps and nature. One winter evening, Elena was reading to the children in the nursery when the door suddenly opened and the Duke walked in. Charlotte ran happily to greet him, while William politely nodded. The Duke apologized for interrupting, saying he did not realize Elena was there. William proudly explained that they were learning about famous explorers and that Elena knew a great deal about Captain Cook's voyages. The Duke raised an eyebrow but said nothing. When Charlotte asked if he would stay and listen, he hesitated for a moment before agreeing to remain for a few minutes. As Elena continued the story, the Duke unexpectedly joined the conversation. He began explaining how sailors once used the stars to guide their ships, describing it in a way the children easily understood. William proudly told Elena that his father had taught him about the stars the previous summer. She smiled, realizing that behind the Duke's strict manner was a caring father. When she suggested that they might all watch the stars together in the spring, the Duke did not promise, but he also did not refuse. After the children were asleep, the Duke walked with Elena down the hallway and admitted that she handled the children very well. The compliment surprised her. She thanked him and spoke warmly about William and Charlotte. He admitted they had not always been so cheerful, especially after their mother passed away. Elena gently explained that children could slowly recover from grief when they received patience and understanding. The Duke quickly interrupted, insisting he had done everything possible to protect them from more pain, even arranging this practical marriage. Elena carefully suggested that by refusing to talk about their mother, he might actually be denying them comfort. He warned her she was stepping too far, but she calmly replied that she spoke only because she cared about the children. They stopped outside her room, and the Duke finally admitted how deeply his first wife's death had affected him. When she died, he felt as if part of the house had died as well. Elena softly assured him that she would never try to replace his late wife. Instead, perhaps they could build something new together for the children's future. As he studied her thoughtfully, she gently corrected him and introduced herself properly as Elena Whitaker before wishing him good night. As winter continued, small changes began to appear at Raven's Hollow. The Duke occasionally joined them for afternoon tea and sometimes listened while Elena read stories to the children. Once, he even surprised everyone by giving William a small wooden ship he had carved himself. William admired every detail, while Elena and the Duke shared a brief look of understanding across the room. Even so, progress came slowly. The Duke remained private and avoided talking about his late wife or his emotions. Moments of warmth were often followed by distance again. As Christmas approached, Elena suggested decorating the Great Hall to bring joy to the children. The Duke firmly refused, explaining that Raven's Hollow had not celebrated Christmas since his wife had died. Elena might have accepted his decision if she had not overheard Charlotte asking William whether Father Christmas would still visit them. William sadly replied that their father did not allow Christmas anymore. Hearing the sadness in his voice convinced Elena that she had to try again. That evening, she went to the Duke's study and asked if they could talk about Christmas for the children's sake. At first, the Duke reminded her that he had already made his decision. But Elena gently insisted that the children deserved the joy of Christmas. When he accused her of interfering in matters she did not understand, she calmly asked why decorations would cause harm. Finally, he admitted the truth. Christmas had been his wife's favorite holiday, and remembering it now felt too painful. Elena realized that he was not protecting the children from pain, but protecting himself. She shared her own experience of loss and explained that life must continue even after deep sorrow. The Duke admitted that every morning he woke remembering his wife was gone. Yet he forced himself to carry on. Elena softly told him that merely existing was not the same as truly living. Clip 13. After a long silence, the Duke's expression softened, and he asked what she suggested. Elena proposed a small and simple celebration. He finally agreed, and in a quiet moment of trust, he told her that when they were alone, she could call him Edmund. Soon the preparations for Christmas filled Raven's Hollow with new life. Simple decorations appeared in the hall, a tree was brought inside, and Elena spent long evenings making small gifts. On Christmas Eve, the family gathered around the tree. Charlotte happily placed ornaments on the lower branches, while William helped his father with the higher ones. When William held up a glass bird and said it had been his mother's favorite decoration, Elena watched nervously. After a pause, Edmund quietly confirmed it and suggested that William continue his mother's tradition of feeding birds in the garden. The moment felt gentle and meaningful. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Elena thanked Edmund for allowing William to speak about his mother. Edmund admitted he had once believed silence would protect the children, but now he realized that sharing memories could help them heal. For the first time, he spoke openly about his late wife, Caroline, and the child they had lost. Deeply moved, Elena gently placed her hand over his. Edmund told her that Caroline would have liked her and would have appreciated the way she cared for the children. Christmas Day passed with quiet joy, simple gifts, laughter, and music beside the fire. That evening, Edmund walked Elena to her door and sincerely thanked her for bringing Christmas back to Raven's Hollow. He admitted he had not treated her kindly at first and that she deserved more than a cold arrangement. She replied softly that he had always been fair and was becoming kinder each day. As winter slowly turned into spring, their relationship continued to grow warmer. Edmund began walking with her in the gardens and sharing stories about his life. Though he still kept a respectful distance, both of them sensed that something important was changing between them. One stormy night in March, Charlotte came to Elena's room frightened by thunder. Soon William joined them as well. Elena comforted them with stories until Edmund appeared in the doorway, worried about the children. Seeing them safe beside her, his expression softened.
Subscribe, hit the bell icon because part 2 is coming and nothing will be.